What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Sully Podcast. Here today, I have with me my guest, Abigail Friedman. You can find the Sully Podcast in this episode specifically at the Sully Podcast on YouTube, Rumble, Facebook, Instagram, and Spotify. On Facebook, though, you can find the username at Real Sully Podcast. So we usually on this podcast, we usually talk about different things, mainly human trafficking. But today we're going to speak on actually Abigail's Jewish experience with Zionism and how the Zionist agenda is not compatible with Judaism whatsoever. And so with that, I'm going to go ahead and let her introduce herself.
Hey y'all, I'm Abby. You kind of just did a perfect introduction. I'm Jewish. I go to Clemson. Yeah. That's all I got for an introduction.
Heard. Well, so I guess to start off, just kind of tell me a little bit more about your upbringing, and how, just Jewish kind of hatred and Zionism, how those kind of affected your life, so far.
Yeah, so I grew up in a very conservative Jewish household. My grandparents and my great-grandparents both came to the U.S. as refugees. So that's always been super important to me. I wasn't really shown what Zionism was for a long time, which is really different than a lot of other Jewish experience. I didn't go to a Jewish private school like a lot of people did. So I didn't really have the indoctrination, I guess, of Zionism, but it's definitely something that I've experienced in the Jewish community, specifically down south compared to I'm from Pennsylvania. So
Okay.
yeah, I've experienced a lot more anti-Semitism because of the fact that I'm anti-Zionist down here. I think it's honestly just a lack of education, but yeah.
Well, I will say South Carolina.
Yeah, South Carolina education system.
We are 42, I think, out of 50 states in education. So, I mean, it shows, you know what I mean?
It definitely
sure.
does.
Yeah. For me, Zionism's evil because of the rhetoric that it spews, and then B, so during the Holocaust and that whole entire thing, Zionists and Nazis both teamed up together to kill actual Jews, which is, I don't know, when you think about it, it doesn't really make much sense, much logical sense.
And that's the thing, prior to the Holocaust and World War II, a lot of Jews, specifically Ashkenazi Jews, didn't support Zionism. It was this crazy ideology because it was supposed to fulfill the biblical prophecy. And the idea that a lot of Orthodox and conservative communities have today, as well as what the idea was before the Holocaust, was they're going to send us somewhere and then they're just going to kill us because that's what the biblical prophecy says. So I don't know why that train of thought left our minds, but yeah.
Sorry that happened, you know what I'm saying? It's just like a plague on society that people, I guess, they think about it, but again, they're very anti-Semitic, but Zionism in of itself is an anti-Semitic thing.
Yeah.
So it's very, again, the lack of education is there, with the entire thought process, and that it doesn't make sense from Theodore Herzl, from his thought process of actually wanting to create that state, was right before, a whole bunch of different lives were, were lost to huge tragedies, which is crazy. For me, for example, how I like to think about Zionism is black supremacists and black supremacy, when a lot of people, we're over that whole stage, or we should be over that whole stage, in society. A lot of black people don't think like that. We aren't walking around, the world and calling ourselves gods and all this, that, and the third. That's only a very small, specific cult of people that actually do that, and it is crazy. The next, what's your views on AIPAC and people like that?
So I actually just recently found out what that was. I'm not even gonna lie, I had no idea what it was. I looked it up, and I was going through their social media and their website and all that, and I was I don't want to say I was in disbelief because I wasn't, but I just couldn't believe like all the lies and stuff that they were spreading. Like there was still videos from like the Hamas tunnels that they found that, you know, ended up not being
real.
Yeah, that weren't even real. But those like videos are still up, and like they're still spewing this rhetoric after it's been disproven so many times. And like I'm pretty sure they still have something up about like the 40 beheaded babies that, you know, we all know didn't exist.
Exactly.
Like
yeah.
I was just like, I was in awe, and this is something that like our politicians and stuff like support as well, like the organizations that are spewing that rhetoric, and it's crazy to me. It's yeah.
I feel you.
Yeah.
I feel you. You know, actually, so myself last year, previous to this year, you know, I've been conservative myself as well. So like AIPAC was at the top of, you know, like the GOP and things like that. Really, all of politics in general.
Yeah.
But yeah, they were at the top of the GOP. I had a lot of different things going on to me for like the span of maybe 5 months. I was pro-Israel because of the rhetoric that they were spewing, and then it didn't make any sense, like logically.
Yeah.
Once I really like, I guess, found out the truth. I knew the truth beforehand, but I kind of second guessed myself there, you know, for a second, because, you know, for example, a lot of people, they'll be, you know, they will speak about, you know, the quote unquote real Jews and the hateful, you know, racist black Hebrew Israelites. They'll, you know, spit their rhetoric, and for a second there, I mean, again, it can mess you up, but even that in of itself is like a slavery tactic of AIPAC to get black people in support of Israel, you know, when in all reality we should be in support of Palestine. And to even kind of elaborate on like what that rhetoric is, you know, of the black Hebrew Israelites and groups like that, they specifically think that the Ashkenazi Jews were never there, that they, you know, that ethnicity is like invalid, which is not. Granted, there were multiple people in that area at that time, you know, of Jesus, but they were spread out, you know, through different places. The Israelites were spread out through different places, and there was way more different ethnicities, you know, when it comes to Judaism. And there's also a lot in Yemen as well. You know, there's lots of Jews in Yemen, which Yemen is going directly after Israel. So, you know, like I guess just the rhetoric, the divide and conquer tactics, you know, to get people on that side is crazy.
Well, and that's an argument that I've heard. Like, I had never heard before that, like, I'm not a real Jew because I'm an Ashkenazi Jew, or like because I'm anti-Zionist, until like post October 7th, like, which is so crazy to me because I post a lot of content on like social media and stuff like that. And like this girl like commented on my TikTok, and she was like, oh, well, your whole ethnicity is fake, your whole culture is fake, like your whole language is fake. And I was like, girl, I don't think so. Like, I'm pretty sure that's my grandma's first language. Like, I don't think it's fake.
It's not.
It's crazy. I just never heard that argument before. And that like also goes back into like the politicians and stuff like that, making it impossible to distinguish like between Zionism and Judaism, and which is a whole thing, because our president went and was like, oh, well, Jewish people don't belong in the US, they belong in Israel, which like he's using us as a scapegoat of like Jewish safety, but then saying like we don't belong in the US. So like, in my opinion, that's just kind of contradictory.
It's Nazi-like, you know?
No, it is.
Yeah,
it
really
is.
It really is.
And I don't think people realize like how much anti-Semitism anti-Zionist Jews are receiving from even like Zionist Jews, or just like Zionist Christians, or like stuff like that. Like, I feel like the whole rhetoric has been like, oh, it's the Zionist Jews that are getting all the anti-Semitism because they support Israel, when that's just not the case. Like, I've been posting about Palestine for 3 years now, and on October 7th, the girl I went to middle school with texted me, and she was like, your family should have died in the Holocaust. And this is like another Jew. And I'm like, that's actually crazy. Like, I've known you for like 10 years and you're gonna say that to me? Like, that's
wicked.
Yeah, like that's actually crazy to me, because that's not very like Jewish of you. Like, yeah, it's wild.
It is very wild. I mean, that's like, you know, besides a meme, that's like real emotional damage, you know what I'm saying? It's like real, like, it's like somebody, you know, saying like, hey, you should be picking cotton again.
No, exactly.
You know, like the
and
same thing.
That's the thing. Like, I couldn't imagine like going and saying that to anyone else. But I think that because it's kind of been so mainstreamed in recent years that people just think it's okay.
Yeah, which is not okay
No.
at all. It's at all. You know, another thing that I kind of wanted to speak about too was I guess just the thought process about some Zionists and Zionism, and like what they really think. So there are Jewish people, right? And this is actually something that I came across, recently, which right now it's a conspiracy. We're not gonna, say it's real. There's a whole bunch of different Jewish conspiracies.
Right.
But there's a distinction with people like, so there was the Jews, back in the day, and then there's these Zionists, and they're actually not the same exact people, like whatsoever at all. And so like some of the things that they do is not human-like, you know what I mean? Like holding a massacre, a genocide of people for 20 plus, for 20,000 plus people within the span of, 3 months. I don't think that that's an actual like human thing to do or to really even think about. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I agree.
Like the love of death, you know what I mean, that these people hold, and it's absolutely crazy. For me myself, I grew up around lots of Jews as well. I did know lots of the Zionist Jews, though, growing up in the South. I didn't know lots of them, and going back in the days, slavery, the American slave trade that was here. Yes, there was Jews, over, like what happened then. But that was not only was that very recent, but that was very closely related to the actual creation of Zionism. I mean, we're only missing from the quote unquote end of American slavery in 1865 to 1890, when Theodore Herzl actually like came up with these ideas. That's a very close span of time, in my opinion. So there's a difference between Zionist Jews and Ashkenazi Jews and conservative Judaism, you know what I mean? Which, you have explained to me like the difference, which is good, but again, I just don't feel like those people like have real hearts.
No, and it like, I never want to say that someone's like not Jewish or like they are or whatever, but the Torah, we follow 613 laws, and at least 30 are broken by Zionism, which is like, you have, Reform Judaism, stuff like that they don't follow the laws as severe, but even they don't break 30 laws. Like, and those laws don't cost people lives. Like, and it's even like, it's major laws, like, don't kill people, or like there's one that says like, don't kill the murderer before he stands trial, and like, they're saying that Hamas is the murderer, so they're breaking that. And then like, you can't move a boundary marker to steal property. You can't burn down olive trees, like, and they burnt like the oldest olive tree. There's stuff that's like seems minuscule in the grand scheme of things, and then there's like, well, this genocide wouldn't be happening if they didn't break this law. Like, so to look at that and still say that Zionism is Judaism, or to say that Israel is acting as a Jewish state, is just wrong. Like, you can't look at it and say that they are a Jewish state when they're not even following their own law, and their own population is protesting. They were protesting prior to October 7th because Israel is trying to go more towards an Orthodox Jewish state, which they don't like. So Orthodox Jews do not support what Israel is doing. Like, I'm sure you've seen the videos of like the rabbis in New York City and stuff like that protesting and reading the Torah out and talking about how it doesn't support Zionism. That's the kind of Judaism they're trying to move towards as a Zionist state. Like, it just doesn't add up. It doesn't add up. It doesn't make
any sense, It really doesn't make any sense. And like, even some of the things that Israel does, the groups that they support. So like, they created Hamas, and now they're in a war with them. They created ISIS. Israel and America both single-handedly created ISIS, and now ISIS is fighting in Ukraine, a whole proxy, like as a whole proxy group. They're fighting in Ukraine. They're fighting against Armenia, which is another Zionist tactic to, again, eliminate religions, which I know that Judaism doesn't stand for, you know what I mean? It doesn't stand for the elimination of Armenians. It doesn't stand for the elimination of Palestinians. You know, there were Palestinian Jews, like, at the times, you know, that we all like speak about, you know, the times of Jesus and Moses and then the Bible, that a lot of those people were still there. They never left the lands, you know, which is, it's ironic that you would want to kick the original, well, you know, some of the original people out just to, you know, create and just procreate this real, or this fake, you know, state, and try to make it real, seem real to like a lot of people.
Well, and like also the Torah says that we're not supposed to have a nation state. Like quite literally, the Torah says we're not supposed to have a nation state until the Messiah comes. And like we were talking about this earlier, like there's this conflation between the Israel's mentioned in the Torah and then what we see today. And like the Israel's mentioned in the Torah is like Jacob, who got the nickname because Yisrael means to wrestle with God. So that's like the big one we see. And then we have, and that in the Torah, it doesn't just reference Jacob. It also means like the Jewish people. And that's like why it's mentioned so much, because like the last line of, I want to say Genesis or something, is like Moses looked over Israel. And like people say that and they're like, oh, that's nation state, like Zionism. And I'm like, no, like they're talking about like the Jewish people. Like there's even a line where it says we're not supposed to have a nation state. We're supposed to be like few in numbers but spread all over or something. Like I just don't understand how they're using the Torah to justify it when it doesn't. It doesn't.
And then so also like in the Quran too, the absolute longest chapter or surah in the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah, so of the cow, it explains. Matter of fact, it's the longest in the Quran. It explains, you know, of what actually happened, you know, to the children of Israel. I believe that the children of Israel are the most spoken people, you know, like in the Quran. And a lot of people, you know, they want to use the Quran to be, you know, like, oh, you know, Muslims hate Jews, or you know, the Quran is like anti-Jewish, so the Quran is very, very explicit, like in its language, and it mentions Zionism when it's when it says when it says like anti-Jewish things, you know what I'm saying? They directly speak about the Zionists so that you can't differentiate, you know, and say that the Zionists are some other group of people, or this, that, the third. And they also speak about like how, you know, like once the Israelites, you know, at that time, once they were brought out of Egypt, you know, once they were brought out of their bondage and slavery, they still continue to worship these cows and false objects, that's the same as Zionism. You know, you're continually disobeying God and expecting for there to be no punishment.
Well, and it's, you know? I actually didn't even know that, but it's funny you say that, because that's like our biggest holiday is Yom Kippur, and it's like the whole purpose of it is like Moses went up, got the Torah. There's a whole thing because we follow a lunar calendar and he was following a solar calendar. So there was like a mix up on when he was supposed to come back. So all the Jewish people like threw their gold in the fire and a golden calf or something came up. And that's like, you know, we started worshiping that. And then that's like the biggest sin that we've ever had. And like, so now on Yom Kippur, that's our like Day of Atonement. It's our like holiest day. Like we're supposed to spend the whole day just atoning for our sins because of that. So I just think it's interesting you mentioned that, because it's,
really, that's crazy, because I didn't know that either. You know, but yeah, like that is the thing. Even the Bible references the synagogue of Satan, you know, and it speaks about, you know, it speaks about the people that consider themselves Jews, but they are not Jews, but they are the synagogue of Satan. They'll fall at your feet and, you know, claim that I have loved you. When the Bible says that, it's not speaking about Ashkenazi Jews being the synagogue of Satan. It's speaking directly about the Zionists, you know, and what they actually like believe, because black magic and things like that, the cabal, that is a part of Zionism. That's where you get all the Jewish conspiracies, and then you get crazy Jewish conspiracies like Hitler and who does crazy things, you know what I mean? So I can definitely see how all those different prophecies, again, at all the same time, from all the same place, go back to speaking about Zionism, the transatlantic slave trade owners, I do know, that there was lots of, so that back in the earlier, days even before the transatlantic slave trade, there was, people that call themselves Jews, who did burn, Palestinians at the stake, for being Palestinian or for what they believed in, and things like that. And again, like, that's not Ashkenazi Jews. That's not a representation of them at all, because if that was the representation of Ashkenazi Jews, then, everybody practicing black magic and voodoo would be the representation for black people.
No, I agree.
Or like, all these different racist ideologies, that black people come up with, like, that would be the representation of us all, if that, for example, is the representation of Ashkenazi Judaism. And I just want to make that known, to be honest with you.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like, I think, like I said earlier, a big issue, like specifically with that, is it's so hard to like politically distinguish between the two. Like, it's been made nearly impossible. And like, it's honestly just powerful people wanting to do what they want to do but not get in trouble for it, so they're just pushing it off of someone else. And specifically a group, like, out of the 3 Abrahamic religions, like, we're the smallest. Like, there's 2 million of us. Like, there's not that many. So they're pushing it off onto someone that, can't really fight back, I guess, for lack of a better word. So.
Which, I mean, that makes sense,
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes the most sense, pretty much, Which, again, with all of these religions, I do want to, also say in this that I know that the platform that I have is, growing. We're getting international recognition. I do want to specifically say that of all the 3 Abrahamic religions, I do not think that Judaism is the religion of like Satan or the Antichrist or things like this. Why do I not think that? Because that was the first revelation, you know what I mean? So if you are pro-Christian, then you can't be anti-Judaism.
Yeah.
If you're pro-Islam, you can't be anti-Judaism.
I agree.
Now you can be anti-Zionist. Matter of fact, I would say it's like,
you should be.
Yeah, you should be, it's almost imperative. Like, I feel like you can't be anti-Epstein and things like that without being anti-Zionist. Yeah. Because those, again, that's like the living representation of how bad that the synagogue is Satan, like the evil people that practice an entirely different version of Judaism, which is also mentioned in the Quran, about how Solomon, how King Solomon, so in Islam, we believe in what's called the jinn. It's these beings that we can't see. They have free will just like us. They can either do good or do bad. And King Solomon, he had control over all the jinn. And, he had a chair similar to this one and threw the jinn in a box. But what happened was a lot of the Jews at that time, they learned the secrets that King Solomon was keeping secret. They learned them, added black magic, and they knew that it was a test for them. That if they use this black magic, they would have their paradise on earth and enter into hell. And a lot of the people did that. They used the black magic, and a lot of those people, all those people that use the black magic, because it's banned, I do know that for a fact, it's banned in all 3 religions, that they are entered into hell. Same thing with the same Zionists of today. They are entering into hell, like it's not up for debate that you can get away with mass murders like that and just like wash your hands and go to heaven.
Exactly. You can't like completely twist a religion into something else and then still expect to, like, we don't believe in heaven, but still expect an afterlife nonetheless. So
I feel that. Well, thank you for being on here. I do totally appreciate that, for sure.
Thank you for having me.
For sure. I totally appreciate like real authentic voices, speaking on the experience, and like that's kind of like what I try to shoot for, more than anything. Yeah. And again, this is Abigail Friedman. Where can people find you?
All of my social media platforms are the same. I'm so easy. It's abby.friedman03.
Nice. Yeah. And again, you can find The Celly Podcast at The Celly Podcast on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, Instagram, and Spotify. The Facebook username is @RealSellyPodcast. And with that being said, I'd like to end this episode. See you guys later on. God bless.
Bye.